Okay, Assalamualaikum and very good morning to all invited guests and participants. Welcome to Ungku Aziz Center for Development Studies, Ungku Aziz Brown Bag Webinar Series number 6, 2020. Before we begin, I would like to express our condolence and takziah to Tan Sri Zati Aziz and family for the loss of our beloved Pak Ungku. So let us have a moment of silence, and to the Muslim, let us Fatihah. It is indeed a great loss to the country and economic icon that is synonym to research in poverty and the Sarong Index. Well, thank you again for your attendance this morning. So let me introduce myself. I'm Hanafi Hussein from the Department of Southeast Asian Studies, Faculty of Arts and Social Sciences, University Malaya. So my field of study on cultural studies and particularly on ritual and the performing arts on Southeast Asia. So let us begin, with by getting close to us about the Ungku Aziz Center for Development Studies. So the Royal Professor Ungku Aziz Chair, called as RPUAC, was established at the Faculty of Economics and Administration, University of Malaya, to honor the contribution of Professor Ungku Aziz in the field of education and economic development, especially rural development and poverty. So the Ungku Aziz Center for Development Studies is created to facilitate the activities of the chair. Since 2016, the center has undertaken steps to develop and further expand the field of development studies to reflect its interdisciplinary nature, to attract a wider participation, to engage young minds, and to go beyond a multidisciplinary approach to development. The defining pillars of the Ungku Aziz Center for Development Studies represent the center's evolution and the dynamism of the field of study. The purpose, of our seminar today of Ungku Aziz Brown Bag Webinar Series 2020 is BBW. The purpose is to provide, a platform for the Ungku Aziz Center research grant recipients to share their works and ideas on their research, of course, their research findings and development issues that are relevant to the UAC's aim and objectives. As we go along with the seminar today, we are fulfilling the one of the pillar, it is 1A, UAC research pillar. So the center, as you can see from the screen, has developed 10 research pillars to anchor research directions. Kindly visit UAC websites and unkuazizcenter.um.edu.my for more information. So the theme for this webinar is based on UAC Research Pillar 1 on poverty, to understand the multidimensional aspects of poverty eradication in order to expand poverty analysis to include the broader development challenges and to derive appropriate policy measures at the different stages of development. So as we are, having our speaker today, so let us get ourselves to know to our young energy here, Dr. Peter Aning. He's going to talk about rural residents' perceptions on the poverty alleviation and governance in Sarawak. Dr. Peter Aning is from the Department of Urban and Regional Planning, Faculty of Built Environment, University of Malaya. So Peter Aning Tedong joined the Department of Urban and Regional Planning at the University of Malaya in December 2014. He is currently the Deputy Head of Malaysian Population and Migration Research Center, University of Malaya. As an urban studies and housing scholar, Peter Aning's broad areas of interest cover housing policy and governance, political economy in urban planning, and also neighborhood sustainability. Recently completed projects explored the socio-spatial planning plans in the context of urban future in Malaysia and the poverty among indigenous community in rural areas. He has also carried out work on the role of governance in governing vulnerable communities and also housing and migration. So his latest area of interest is multi-layered governance of housing, the sustainable development goals in relation to neighborhood planning and the impacts of migration towards regional and urban development. Peter's empirical focus is on the Southeast Asian region, but he has conducted fieldwork in many places in Europe, Borneo Island, North America, and also Oceania countries. As I already introduced Peter Aning, so his title, of presentation today is based on UAC research grant. Okay, and the title, as mentioned, Assessing Poverty Among the Rural Communities in Covet and Belaga, Sarawak, using Multidimensional Poverty Index or MPI. This research, conducted by Dr. Peter Aning as a PI and also co-joined with Dr. Hana Jani from Ungku Aziz Center for Development Studies, Faculty of Economics and Administration, University of Malaya, and together with Dr. Azmah Osman, Department of Development Studies, Faculty of Economics and Administration, University of Malaya. So without further ado, let us have Dr. Peter Aning to deliver his talk on assessing poverty among the rural communities in Covet and Belaga, Sarawak, using multidimensional poverty index. Over to you, Dr. Peter.
Thank you, moderator, for your kind introductions. So good morning and salam sejahtera, everyone. So today I'm going to share with you my recently completed research project on the multidimensional poverty among rural community in Sarawak. So let me talk a little bit about the history of this project. We started our project back in 2018 and completed our data collection in the same year in 2018 as well. So one of the main objectives of this study is that to examine the multidimensional poverty issue in one of the divisions in Sarawak, which is Covet division. However, along the way of the projects, we found a significant findings on the resident perceptions towards the role of the government and the state in poverty alleviation in Sarawak. Therefore, today I will present the findings from our qualitative data to understand what the residents think and feel about the poverty alleviation program and strategy. I would like to mention here, as I'm not an economist, I will explain this research based on the community development approach that we are, and then I will explain how actually and why community development is very important in order to understand the poverty alleviation. So as you can see in my slide, the title of my presentation today is the poverty alleviation and governance in Sarawak, and we try to understand this from the residents' perceptions, a case study in Song. Very quickly on the presentation outline for today, we started with our presentation, introduce a little bit about the poverty in rural area in the global context, and then we try to conceptualize how actually community development and poverty interrelated to each other, and then straightforward to the overview of poverty in Malaysia in general and Sarawak in particular. And then followed by research approach, finding, and some takeaway point. What do we learn from this presentation, and what are the residents' aspirations toward the poverty program and alleviation in Sarawak? Okay, in 2015, United Nations actually reported that there are 736 million people live below the poverty line of USD 1.90 cents per day, and around 10% of the world population live in extreme poverty. So basically, most of the people who live below the poverty line belongs to the two regions, namely South Africa and also in Southern Asia. So while actually in Southeast Asia, there are quite a number of researchers actually agree that poverty also appears in some area in Southeast Asia, such as in Myanmar, Thailand, Indonesia, and Malaysia. So in line with the international benchmark of 1.90 cents per day, USD 1.90 per day, the quantity of individuals living in poverty has increased significantly, roughly around 1 million between 2010 and 2016. This is particularly true, especially those who living in rural area. Realizing on the issue of poverty in rural and urban area, so United Nations actually introduced the Sustainable Development Goal back in 2015 to improve the social and economic well-being of the community. So one of the goals is that, especially on the goal number 1, mentions but no poverty. That actually mentions about left no one behind, meaning that we need to include those in rural area as well when we try to plan for the program and strategies. So as I mentioned it earlier, so I will try to explain this poverty alleviation and strategy based on the community development approach, which I will call this as CDA later on. The general idea of CDA is to acknowledge community engagement and participation as a critical and fundamental elements to address the poverty. So most of the government from developed and developing countries has adopted this approach to improve the social and economic well-being of community, especially those vulnerable communities in rural area. So in general ways, community development is understood as the process of involving and empowerment of people in disadvantaged community for the purpose of influencing and asserting greater control over resources and decisions that may affect their life. Normally, the CDA approach will embrace the principles such as community participation, community empowerment, and also talk about their ability to decide on the program and strategies in their own areas, meaning that they need to actively participate in the decision-making process. So therefore, the government actually will know what do the residents really want for their community. Okay, in the community development approach, the most powerful term that has been introduced by many researchers previously is in terms of the community empowerment. So basically, empowerment is a process of change from being disempowered and not able to make choices to gaining the opportunity to make choices. And it's achieved through enabling institutions and policy framework for participants and access to resources. Community development approach will provide opportunity for a community to have a say and participate in planning and projects and activities that in relations of poverty alleviations. This is very crucial for the policymaker to understand what the residents really want, rather than introduce something that the government think the resident want. So the mismatch between the needs of the residents and also the policy that the government want to implement can be solved through active participations from the residents, and at the same time can empower them to improve their social and economic well-being. So let's quickly, in terms of overview of poverty in Malaysia in general, if we look at the Malaysia context of poverty, The poverty rate is very low and continue to decrease with only 0.4% of Malaysian households living below the national poverty line in 2016. So the success of poverty reduction in Malaysia is a result of various programs and mechanisms that was introduced by the federal and also the state government. However, World Bank in 2019 reported that although the poverty has declined, poverty rates are higher in rural areas, especially in Kelantan, Sabah, Sarawak, Kedah, and also Kedah. This is the general overview of the poverty incidence in Malaysia. We look at into the 40 years trend of poverty incident. In 1970, the poverty incident in Malaysia was recorded at 49.3%. and reduced significantly to 0.4% in 2016. If we examine the poverty trend in East Malaysia, in particular in Sarawak, the poverty rate was reduced from 47.8% to 0.6% in 2016. So as an urban studies scholar, the question that arises from this trend is, who are these communities who still live in the poverty? Where are they located? And why are some groups still not able to escape from the poverty incidence? So these questions actually lead me to examine further the scenario and situations of poverty incidence in rural community in Sarawak. So I'm going to introduce a little bit about the overview of poverty in Sarawak. So although poverty in Malaysia is considered significantly declined, rural poverty remain higher in certain area in Sarawak, especially in the rural area. So the rural community in Sarawak always associated with lack of basic infrastructure, such as not proper housing condition. They do not have access to treated and clean water. There is no 24 hours electrical supply, lack in terms of school and also clinics. This is one of the major issue that has been discussed by previous researcher. In the worst case scenario, their settlements are difficult to reach by the government, especially by the government because of the geographical landscapes. So many researchers actually acknowledge this issue and relate it with a pocket of poverty, and this pocket of poverty is still happening in many rural areas in Sarawak. So as I mentioned earlier, Sarawak recorded 0.6 of incidence of poverty in 2016. So in terms of development process of Sarawak, it is well noted that most of rural communities are still highly depending on the traditional agriculture sector. And to be fair to the government as well, the development process is very challenging, particularly due to the geographical location, as most of their areas are surrounded by thick forests and mountains. So this is a little bit overview about the Sarawak in general. Okay, also now let we take a look very briefly on the general strategies and program in terms of the main aim and objectives of the government currently. So from previous literature as well, I managed to summarize this into three main things. The first one is to increase the efficiency and productivity by improving the agriculture sector and financial assistance to increase the poor income. In this sense, I would say that the government has done a good job by providing assistance to the poor in terms of agriculture assistance and provide trainings to the poor household from the traditional agriculture to modern agriculture. So at the regional level as well, the government has increased, they're trying to increase the quality of life of the poor by improving social services such as housing, health, education, and social infrastructure. And let's take a look in terms of some of the selected strategies and program in poverty alleviation in Sarawak. This is categorized into three areas. Of course, there's many more. The first one is in terms of the infrastructure development. The federal and state government actually through the various Malaysia plan with the main aim to improve the social and economic well-being of the community has providing some huge funding and budget to improve the rural road program, for instance, rural water supply program, rural electricity supply program, and village road program. And in terms of the, not only that, the government actually also provided findings for the rural community in terms of housing aid program, meaning that the government will provide some seed money for the rural community to improve their housing situations. So in terms of social assistance, I think Ikasih is pretty much well-known in our country. It's a very successful model where this model can actually helping a lot of poor community. And we also have one Azam programs. So in terms of education assistance, we do have this bantuan kumpulan wang amanah pelajar miskin, and also bantuan makanan pelajar miskin as well in certain rural area that are visited. So these are the amongst other things that the strategies and program of poverty alleviation in Sarawak in particular. So, so based on these projects, so let me explain a little bit about our approach for this project. It's we divided into 3 phases. The phase 1, where we do our content analysis. During this phase, we examine various government documents such as statistical data from DOSMs. We also examine newspaper media stories about the poverty incident in Sarawak and so on and so forth. In the first year as well, we actually distributed household survey to the head of household in 7 longhouses in Sarawak. I will explain later on where is our study area is located. In phase 2, we did our in-depth interview with various organizations and also the community leaders in Song, Sarawak. And then today, as mentioned earlier, I'm going to present the finding from this qualitative interview and followed by case study analysis. At the phase 3, we did our focus group discussion with various organizations. We did also seminar, and also outcome of this project earlier has been presented to the Ministry of Women, Children, Ministry of Wellbeing, Women and Children in Sarawak, KWKPK. So this is the study locations. So our study location is located in Kapit Division, which is in Song District. So for everyone information, Sarawak is divided into 12 division, and each division is further divided into district, with Kuching as the state capital. So for Kapit actually divided into three districts. First district is Belaga, where the Empangan Bakun is located, and also Kapit itself as the central administration for Kapit division. And the smallest district is Song district. Okay, well, our study area, so zooming into Song. Song actually look into Song in terms of the geographical context. Song has the one of main river called as Katibas River. So our study case study area is located along the Katibas River. So meaning that boat is the main transportation communication system in this area. So from Song to, for instance, you got SMK Song, and we do have here SMK Nanga Ungku, SMK Nanga Bangkit. We cover all of this area. The journey from Song, it could take you from around from Song, depends on the water streams. It around maybe 6 hours, 6 to 5 hours by boat. I will show you the pictures later on. Yeah. Let me bring you to the study location to tell you how remote the area is, so that you can get some overview about my case study area. So for instance, if you are from Kuala Lumpur, you need to fly to Cebu City. Cebu is a city, one of among the largest city in Sarawak. From city, you need to take the boat. Express boat, we call it an express boat, 2 or 3 hours journey to Song Town. Song Town is a pretty small town. It's only have 5 or 6 blocks, commercial buildings in that particular area. And look into the structure, it's kind of like mixed between concrete and wood structure as well. And you need to stay 1 night in this Song area, in Song Town, before you could go to the longhouses. Okay, for the Song Town, you need to take a small boat, such as in the bottom on your left picture. It takes you around, as I mentioned just now, it depends on the water situations, the river situation. It might be 3 up to 6, 7 hours. and then only then you can go to the longhouses. The longhouse is located next to the river. Okay. Very briefly on this, on the study location in terms of ethnicity of these people, who are they living in that area? So based on the DOSM's data, Iban ethnicity is the biggest population in Sarawak, with a total population of almost 30% in the whole Sarawak. So we zoom into Song area. There are currently around 23,000 of total population in Song. Majority, more 90% is Iban community, 20,000, followed by Chinese and then Malay and then amongst others. In terms of the household income in Song, in these three districts, I would compare between Song, Kapit and Balaga district. So in terms of the median income 2014, 50% of the population actually earned below than 2,389 ringgit, but slightly increased in 2016 to 2,899 ringgit. So now we know that the income is slightly increased for the past few years, but we do not know what are the trigger or what are factors that contribute to the increasing of income for the past few years. I think this is required for the explorations into more research. You can see that in the graph as well, most of the Iban in the pink color, this is where the Song district, for the Song district, is mostly they are concentrated around 3,000 below. So so this telling that the median income around 1,000 to 3,000 ringgit per month. Access to basic amenities, it's good for us to see what are the current facilities, amenities in that particular area. So according to the household income survey 2016, 98.2% household has access to electricity, or by 1.8% no electricity. I'm going to explain about this later on, but I just throw the fact first here. 39.5% actually pipe water in the house, 0.9% public water, 99, almost 60% is from other natural resources. Access to basic amenities, 1.8% household have access to private clinics within 5-kilometer area, and 72.5% household have access to public clinic within 5-kilometer area. So we took out the 5 kilometer as the basis for the to assess the basic to amenities. So let me tell you what motivates us to do these studies. So for the past few years, there are newspaper stories reported about poverty issues and development issues in Sarawak, as you mentioned in the pictures here, and also based on my observation and experience as someone who grew up in the area. So I kind of like witnessed the changes for the past 30 years in the area. So let me now tell you the respondents of our study for this second phase of this project, which is the qualitative research. Our participants, we categorize into two. The first one is in terms of stakeholder, second is residents. So we did interview the welfare department, DO office, and also from Department of Education. For the residents, we interview 21 residents from different 7 longhouses. Okay, these are the selected longhouses that we have visited during our case study analysis. And to be fair, we choose we select the longhouses based on the first one is near to this town center. Those near to the Song town center, they will have access 24 hours access to the electricity and also pipe water. But those more than 10 kilometers from the city center, from the town center, will have they will not the in terms of facilities amenity will be slightly different compared to those who located near to the Song town. So during the case study analysis, we did the observations and focus group discussions with different longhouses in Song area. We talk with those who still live in the longhouses, the longhouse. So it is. I want to mention it here that most of young generation actually migrate out from this longhouse because there is no job opportunity currently in the area. So we only able, so this is one limitation of our study, because we only able to interview those in the older generation. They still live in these longhouses. During this case study analysis, we observe in terms of their living quality of life, and also in terms of their living condition. So if you look at into this is very selected pictures. In terms of electricity, most of the areas still use the generator as for their electric supply. So one of the concerns during our visit is that in terms of waste management, this is one of the issue. They just throw out the rubbish to the river without a proper channel to dispose the rubbish. And you can see the blue a tank here is one of among others the project that has to be given by the government for them to for their water supply. Okay, and also some of them also highly rely on the traditional agriculture as well. Okay. Okay, now let's take a look on the residents' opinions about the social assistance programs, which we actually interviewed quite a number of residents in the rural area. So what did they say about the assistance? So we would like to note that here that the government assistance programs is very important, particularly to in keeping rural community out of poverty. There are a lot of programs has been done by government. There are lots of strategies has been introduced to in that particular area, but somehow residents still feel things that, for instance, one is saying that I'm very poor, but my application was rejected by them just because I have children whom they think I will give monthly allowances to me. And second respondent also mentions that I'm aware about the social assistance, but I do not know how to apply them. I went to GKM office, but there is too many documents that need to fill up. So during these discussions with residents regarding the social assistance programs, most of them actually express their frustrations in terms of the process in applying for the social assistance. And sometimes they also think that they are eligible for the social assistance, but their application was rejected without any further explanations from the government. So these are among the other things that really, we need to really take a look on in terms of, especially in terms of social assistance programs. So our document analysis also revealed that although the government introduced various programs and assistance to reduce the poverty, the implementations proved really difficult due to the remoteness of the area. For instance, there is a weaknesses in the distribution government assistance, as many of the Iban community is living in very remote area. Okay, and for instance, if you can see here, the one of mentions here, I believe that the government social assistance has not reached, I believe that the government social assistance has not reached the actual target, as more poor people did not get the assistance. However, actually, they also acknowledge the government already did a good job, although some poor people have get help from the government. The assistance is still not enough. I do not know how the government process the applications for the social assistance program, but some sort of applications were rejected even though the applicants felt that they wanted the assistance. When it comes to the state general election seasons, the government will start promising to develop our area. Some promises were delivered, but many are not. We just want improvement in terms of basic infrastructure such as road connectivity and access to electricity in our area, but until today, no significant changes have been made. However, we still struggle in our daily lives. So here, what's the point in this implementation social program is that the government actually has program already implement some program, but it might be not adequate enough to cover all to the target group of rural community in the particular area. And in terms of development, some of the development has been implemented, but some are not. And strongly, participants really frustrated because in terms of, especially in terms of road connectivity, very basic infrastructure is still not available at that area during our site visit. So in terms of the feedback on the role of the states in helping them from the poverty perspective, residents say that the government has promised to build a road from nearby town to our longhouses. The promise has been made for the past 20 years, but the road is still not ready and still under construction. I think the construction of road has been happening for the last 10 to 15 years, but the construction is still ongoing. We cannot commercialize our agriculture product because we highly depending on the river as our main transportation system. You imagine from my area to Song, it will take me 3 to 4 hours by boat. The main issue that I would like to highlight here is that it's not only in terms of their transportations mode, but also in terms of the cost. The cost to buy the fuel for the boat is around maybe 100 to 200 ringgit for a round trip. So this also incur cost for them as well. And some residents mentioned that no significant changes in the area for the past 20 years. Everything look the same, so our children move out from this area to get better job in other area, no job opportunity area. So we actually cross-check this with our case study analysis during our visit. We also found out that the young people actually migrate from the area because there is no opportunity in that particular area. So the young people need to move out from the area. When we also found that some of the longhouses, actually, the government has provided the solar energy, which is a very good move from the government to have this rural community. But still, some of them still express their frustrations because the battery capacity for the solar only allowed them to use it for only 12 hours only. So this is where actually the area that can improve when the government want to implement the new policy or new programs in the rural development. Okay. All right, to be fair, to cross-check what residents say and how do the stakeholder feel about the program assistance, we put a little bit on the finding from the stakeholder here, even though today's presentation title is on the resident perceptions. So the first one, in terms of the limited manpower and financial resources, one of the stakeholders we interviewed mentions that we receive hundreds of applications for the social assistance, but we have very limited manpower and our budget also limited. We need to interview all applicants to verify the information, so this is really a time consuming for us. Yes, it is particularly true because it's the only few people only that are doing their, as a manpower for this to verify the social assistance, that they're very limited manpower because they need to check one by one the application whether the information is correct or not, and so on and so forth. So in terms of process and procedure, all right, so this is to cross-check back on what residents say about they feel they're entitled, didn't get entitled. So the stakeholders said that sometimes the applicants felt that they are entitled for assistance. However, there are some criteria that we need to follow. For instance, if you have children who is still working, they will not be eligible to apply for the welfare assistance. And then we also asked about infrastructure development. So the constructions of road connectivity from Sibu Song Kapit is ongoing now. This is, I would like to acknowledge that this is in 2018. Hopefully, it will be ready in the next few years. We are working hard to improve the well-being of the community by closely working with the Tuai Rumah or head of the community. So this is what the response we get from the stakeholder to verify the information we get from the resident, and that's so that we can find out the intersection, the findings from them, from both the parties. All right, so of course, and then we examine in terms of resident aspirations, what do they want for their community? So for instance, one mentioned about, I hope there is an automatic system for the government to distribute the social assistance without too many process. When I probe further, what do you mean by too many process? Because they need to supply a lot of information, a lot of documents, whereby they are already in a difficult living condition, and it's difficult life. So they still need to provide many documents before we can apply for assistance. So another one mentions about, I hope the government will improve basic infrastructure in our area, such as access to 24 hours electricity. Yes, the government actually has provided solar energy in some longhouses, but the solar energy is only, sometimes only up to 12 hours only. And then I hope more financial assistance can be given to a poor family like myself. I wish my children will stay with me, but they need to migrate to other cities because there is no job opportunity here. And I wish the government can increase the monthly allowance for the social assistance, as everything is so expensive now. When they mention about it's so expensive now, they actually refer to high living costs. So I segmented aspirations of the people into 4 categories. The first category that might be potential to be implemented in that area, I see some evidence that the community already started. Some of the community started to build up to develop a sweep-led farming atau sarang borong layang-layang, which is this really good, meaning that they started to move out from the agriculture, traditional agriculture sector to modern agriculture sector. And some of the community also started to, they also started and also have, some of them already have the black pepper plantations, rubber estate. And throughout the interview, there's some unique answer from residents that they want, venture to Ampurau fish farming. So, Ampurau is the most expensive fish in Malaysia at the moment. It can cost you around 2,000 to 3,000 ringgit per kg. If you can see in the picture here, in this one of this is one fella actually sell their Ampurau 7,000 ringgit, 7,000 ringgit. So this is kind of thing that residents really want. They want a support from the government. They want more program, more projects from the governments. I would like to acknowledge effort from the Department of Agriculture in Song. Actually, this department did a good effort, good job by providing so-called startup program by providing instead of give assistance into fertilizer for the black pepper plantation and so on and so forth. But moving forward beyond that, the government should really look into how to commercialize the product. At the moment, the resident doesn't know how to commercialize the product. They heavily rely on the middleman to sell the product. So this is also one of the problems as well. Okay, and of course, when talk about financial assistance, there are a lot of comments made by the residents. So I choose only 3 here. That's the thing that's most important. First is scholarship for poor school children. Yes, Yayasan Sarawak, I think providing a lot of funding, a lot of scholarship and then loan to the poor school children, but might be some of a segment group in rural areas are not aware about the program because less awareness, for instance. And also the resident also asking for increased monthly allowance for super aging individual and also financial assistance for asrama agriculture. So these are among other things that the resident really want for their community because they believe that if they can have a good education, they can escape from the poverty and so on and so forth. In terms of social infrastructure, previously everything was talking about the proper road network and systems, but I think I will show to you later on what happened today and now. One of the really major comment from them is to have kind of like one-stop center for handcraft products. I think Sarawak is very popular with puak kumbu, even though there are some organizations actually promote this puak kumbu in international arena. I know that last year they went to UK to promote this puak kumbu. And yes, I would like to acknowledge as well DO office in Song did a really good job by working closely with Tuai Rumah in terms of trying to improve the social infrastructure in that area. And last but not least, for the aspirations of people, previously, we talked about the importance of education to the children, but we need to move beyond that. We need to actually educate the parents, because the parent is not educated. They have low education level, so they might not aware how the importance of educations. Because when I did my interview, some of them just mentioned, until primary or secondary form 5 is good enough, but we want them to go to university and so on and so forth. So my point here is that regular motivation talks on important educations to the parents is very important, not to the children. We need to educate parents first before we need to educate the children. Okay. So these are the takeaway points for today's presentations. It's pretty much that government has done a good job, good effort. We see some changes, trend here and there, especially in the rural area in Song. But it might be not efficient, it's not efficiently distributed, or it might be not reach the actual target group. So this is the thing that where we need to improve our practice. And in terms of, because I just mentioned just now, the main because of limited manpower capability to implement the program, it could become the huge barrier to alleviate the poverty in the rural area. awareness on the financial literacy and also long-term saving, for instance, ASB, and also tangible and intangible investments are lacking due to low level education. This is where another area that maybe we can do more awareness programs to the local community. And last but not least is that knowledge on poverty eradication problems should be included with the community development approach. We need to empower the residents so that they can participate in the development process, so that we'll know what will be implemented in the area and what do they really want for their community or for themselves. So I would like to see more kind of like, pilot projects, for instance, in certain areas, so that we can really tracking what happened, when we implement the project and then after a certain year. Okay, I would like to acknowledge the government effort in improving the area for the past. This is what happening now today, 2020. Okay. I look at into in the left picture, the government actually, of course, they're collaborative between different agencies in coordinating this program. They have, as I mentioned just now, housing aid program, bantuan project perumahan. They give some seed money for this project. They give like 12,000 per family to build this. You can see to build their long houses. Of course, the spirit of gotong royong must be there. 12,000 is not enough to build one long house. The gotong royong means that the resident itself will try to will build the house. There is no contractor involved. So this is really good approach by the state government, and I hope this can be taken up, scale up in a more bigger scale to all of the area in the rural area. So this is really a good opportunity for me. Previously, when I lived in this area for 20 years, 30 years, boat express is still one of major transportation for us in that area. But today now, the Pen Borneo, the highway is now almost complete. 90%, I would say 95% is on completion. So you can see, I can see there's a huge impact when the road connectivity system is good in that particular area. I can see the people from the rural area can actually commercialize the product to the city center, and this definitely can improve their incomes. When this is how actually economists and the town planner can working together how to improve the area. Okay, of course, the limitation of the research under the rain and the sun. As a researcher, we still go trekking all the long houses in Sungai Ketibas. It took us 4, 5, 6, 7 hours. It's something that really normal to us. And I would like to acknowledge one of the houses that we visited. I would like to thank for all the residents. And fortunately, one of the long houses was caught in fire last year, and hopefully they can get the government can help them to build their settlement. I will finish this discussion with food for thoughts from this research, which I think need further explorations, further probing, further searching. At the moment, I do not have this answer yet. Maybe I can get more feedbacks from from audience and so on and so forth. The data we get from the source, Housing Income Survey in 2016, zero poverty incident in Song. It's kind of like contradict for what I'm showing just now. 1.8% private clinic within 5 kilometers. As someone from the area, I didn't really see, maybe the interpretation of clinic might be different from the Department of Statistics. And also, as 98.2% accessible to electricity. I think I can say it here that majority of long houses that we visited, and they still do not have access to electricity. This definition might be revisited, whether this generator electricity or whether it is 24 hours electricity. We need more comprehensive definitions on this. So this I leave it because this always linger in my mind. I don't have answer for this, and something that we can further searching in the near future. Okay. So last but not least, I would like to thank Ungku Aziz Center for Development Study for giving us the opportunity to, with the grant to do this research in one of the rural area in Sarawak. And also like to thank my team member, Associate Professor Dr. Rohana Jani, and also Dr. Azma Hotman. If you have any further questions, you want to get any further information that you things that we can collaborate further, to do this research and how to a way forward for this research, you can email me at peteraning@um.edu.my. So with that, thank you everyone for your attendance today. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Peter, on your presentation. Well, a lot of information and of course a lot of insight as well. So I do need to, what we call it, summarize it. We will open to Q&A later, but before, we accept the question. So you can post your question, then we can read from the screen. But let me lead, this session by asking few questions. Okay. I mean, from your presentation, at the end you say the result, of your research kind of contradict with your findings. So actually, I was planned to ask this question, because of people mentioned they are in very poor, and also the young generation migrated. But when the 0% of the poverty incidence, so it's a kind of really contradict of your findings. So maybe you can elaborate more on this, because of I want to know what is the insight of this story of poverty. Yeah.
Okay, this data is from the household income survey in 2016, but purely based on our observations on the ground and also our data collections on the ground. Certainly, there are some still, majority of those living in rural area are still living in the poverty situations. As I mentioned just now, this require further searching, further probing, how actually they define the poverty incident in that particular area. What are the variables? We do not know what the variable at the moment to answer this. But if we look at into what is happening on the ground is that the people is still living in a poverty, especially when they are still pretty much relying on the agriculture sector. I interviewed the residents, those who are still living in the long houses. Normally, they say to me that their monthly income is around 300 to 5 ringgit per month. But in terms of their daily expenses, they just get it from their own farm. So this, yeah. So this one is definitely we need further searching on this. At the moment, I do not have the answer for this. Yeah.
Okay. So maybe, as you mentioned, there's another variables, that they use to measure this poverty. Probably people also interested to look at the happiness index, in as opposed to the measurement of the poverty. So maybe as an insider, can you elaborate about the happiness of the people? So maybe when people do their survey next time, they can do cross-check about this.
Wow, I think in terms of happiness, they are at the neighborhood level, for instance, right? No, sorry, at the family level, I think they're quite happy with their lives. Huh? The only thing is that they would like to see more improvement in terms of the very basic facilities and amenities, such as I mentioned just now, the respondent keep mentions about they want to see more electricity. Why they want electricity? So that their children can, when they want to study during the night time, they will have this lighting, so on and so forth. In terms of the happiness, whether they're happy or not, I'm pretty sure they are happy with their current life, but they wish to see more in terms of infrastructure development. Yeah.
So meaning that more income, and then the index of happiness will be higher.
Yeah.
So I think looking at the happiness index at the very high rate, so that means will kind of ease their poverty, something like that. Okay, because when we do study on poverty, maybe happiness index could be, considered as one of the important indicator to include the study. Okay, so I move to the next question. You were mentioned about the Umpurau fish farming. So it's a kind of promising, what we call it, aspect of income generation. But how this thing contradict with the, outgoing of the young generation? Can't they, be trained or be involved in this Ampurau fish farming, among the people over there? So I don't know, because of it's a kind of giving kind of hope or potential in getting more income because of the price.
Well, as I mentioned just now, there are some agencies that already started the project on, it's not Ampurau, I don't know how it's called in ikan semah. Semah fish, I don't know what's the term, it's semah fish. Yeah. Actually, they have this kind of projects. They're very good initial project, by the way. But the only thing is that, for me, what's lacking at the moment is in terms of training, proper training. How actually, this particular community can really maintain for instance, the fish farming, right? The training is very important. Number one. Number two, to teach the resident is that how to commercialize that fish without go through the middleman persons. Or they could be, for instance, maybe frozen that kind of fish, and then maybe it can be in the bigger scale, export it to another countries, for instance. So I think that could be done, yeah. But at the moment, the local is of course in terms of training, not much training given to the residents in terms of this agriculture, modern agriculture. Yeah.
So this is very important, because of this attract me to the next level of question. I don't know whether question or comment. This is related to the research. When people receive the researchers like you, their expectation only people coming here to research for the academic purpose, but probably the people also looking at how the researchers is very important to what we call it, to uplift their level of income by introducing many aspects of training and what we call it, marketing, and so on. So probably they can't depend from the government or non-government agencies to help them. Probably this is about time for the researchers like you to team up with the people, what we call it, can apply the technology, as you mentioned, as part of team of researchers. It's not only doing research about them, but also deliver the technology transfer. It's not only on the technology transfer, but also on the marketing strategy, and also probably the team that could help to market their product. So for example, this Ampurau fish. So what do you think? Because maybe people out there feel tired about researchers just to get information, but nothing could happen with the information that they feed to the researchers. So maybe you can respond on this.
Yeah, I think in terms of the song area, to be particular, there's still quite limited research study on if possible, we can say small size town. But I do agree on you, the collaborative effort between different professions such as economists, those for town planners, those for another professions, can work collaboratively to actually introduce the pilot projects to pilot project so that we can know the impacts of the program that they introduced. Just we taking into example Empura farming, we do pilot. For instance, the government can do the pilot project, you know, with collaboration with NGO and others researcher. So over the year, what are the impacts of the Empura fish farming to the local community, whether it can improve their income or not, or what are the significant impacts in terms of income, or in terms of maybe it can create job opportunity as well when we do something like the pilot project like that. So as I mentioned during my presentations, I really would like to see a pilot project need to be done in rural community, need to be selected, and they need to be monitored, not only to just implement. The monitoring and evaluation part is very important. I think at the moment, this is where we are lacking. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Peter. I think findings of your research, I mean, based on the into so it's kind of interdisciplinary research project or program welcome, you know, to collaborate. I hope that maybe you and through the Ungku Aziz Poverty Research Center could have a kind of impactful research one day, you know. So this is what people or country need. Okay. Well, let us check whether there's a question already posed to us. Okay, so there's a question, you know, from Dr. Tiru. The rise in income in Song between 2014 and maybe 2016. Yeah, apology from Dr. Tiru. Let me read again. The rise in income in Song between 2014 and 2016. Could it be possibly contributed by remittances from migrants employed in urban areas?
As I mentioned just now in my presentation, at the moment we know that the income is increasing, but we do not know what's the factor. But it could be because of the remittance of the migrants to the urban area. It could be as well. But because the median income was based on the total area of Song area, so meaning that this will also include those who living in the rural areas, meaning that it's kind of like blanket to those in all the particular in the Song area. Yeah, but we do not know for sure, at least for me myself, because we not do research on that particular area. But it's really good if we can have more data to say what are the factor that contribute to the increment of the income in between 2014 and 2016. Yeah.
Okay. So thank you, Dr. Peter. I hope it answers Dr. Tiru's question. So, well, Dr. Tiru, if you have more questions, you may post it later. Yeah. So let us move to the next question. How does poor families in rural Sarawak is affected by the COVID-19 pandemic, and how do they cope with the pandemic?
This is something that happening today now, which to be honest, I'm not really tracking the impacts on the COVID-19 pandemic. So, but however, because my family is living in that area, in terms of in that particular area is pretty much a green area. There is no COVID-19 cases in Song area as for today. So they still can go to their, do their agriculture work with the police approval. So I think that's not really, pretty much I can say that COVID-19, particularly in Song, of course, in terms of social distancing, there might be some impact on it, but they're still living pretty much normal. Yeah. So this is based on my family response, because my response is still living there, and also my relatives as well, because checking on them during this COVID-19. Yeah.
Okay. So next, yeah, still anonymous here. Before telling us about the feedback received and respondents' opinion, could the speaker first explain the design of the qualitative study? the exact scope of the discussion, and the methodological issues.
Okay, this is, I think, pretty much on the methodology that we employ. So as mentioned just now, we actually have three phases of our study. The phase one is on the quantitative analysis. Sorry, quantitative, yeah. The second one, we did our qualitative interview. So qualitative interview is that we, interview respondents. We go to the longhouses, we speak one-to-one, face-to-face with them, in-depth interview with them. We ask questions such as, for example, we ask question, do you know about, we try to very general question first, do you know about social assistance from the government? If yes, what are your understandings about the program, for instance? If not, have you heard from other parties? And then we explain to them, so this, for instance, Inkasi program, and so on and so forth. And we also managed to interview the recipient of the program as well. That's why we ask them whether at the moment, whether the assistance is enough or not, then we get the answer that can be slightly higher, it will increase slightly higher. So in terms of the methodological issue of it, yes, we need to admit that because our limitation, as it mentions, is we only interview those who still live in the longhouses. And you need to imagine that 30 families, at least 30 families in one longhouses, it's only maybe 5 families is still living there, 5 to 10 families. So our sample is very limited, and then our interview is very focused on those who still live in that area, in the longhouse. Yeah. So that's one of the challenge because we didn't include those who already migrate out from the area. Yeah.
So since maybe I echo that question. So since are you treating them as an informant or as a respondent? So in this study,
as a respondent. Yeah. Before we go to visit the longhouses, actually we already contacted the Tuai Rumah, our head of household. We informed that we will come in a certain day, so actually they will prepare, and then so most of them actually stay in the house. They didn't go to the farm because they're waiting for us to visit them. So this is the some of the challenges that we're facing as well. Yeah.
Okay. So next question. Yeah, this from Dewi Yulianti from Universitas Lampung, Indonesia. So let me read here. I have read a few findings on rural poverty alleviation and governance in Sarawak, that financial literacy and empowering parents to educate children in that area are essentials. In line with those findings, what are the strategies, programs, and policy to solve those social economic problems?
Thank you, Devi. I think this question is more into the financial literacy in empowering parents to educate children. Yes. I think there's at the moment there are quite a lot number of program has been introduced by the government to support those, especially poor school children. As I mentioned just now, we have this food aid program to the poor children in the lowest and primary standard 1 until standard 6. And also one of the schools that I visited, they also have this regular motivation talk to the children about the importance of the educations. But as I mentioned just now, it must be on the programs itself. It must be on the strategy and program for the school children. But we need to educate the parents, especially those in rural area where they actually have very low level of education. So we need to tell them this is the education is very important for their children. Yeah.
Okay. So I hope Dr. Peter answered David's question. Next is from Sharimin. Hi, Dr. Peter. Refers to government social programs not being efficient and not reaching everyone as is mentioned just now. Question 1. So she has so many questions there. 2, but I am saying many. Okay. Question 1. What is meant by not efficient? Did you mean not equitable instead? And then question 2, how do you establish a limited coverage? Is in-depth study approach appropriate for identifying program coverage? So how was this validated? So was government data on respondents used for cross-validation? And then did your team collected the data on actual enrollment in this program at the household level?
Thank you, Sharimin. I think this is very, very good questions. I forgot to mention just now that this project is part of our also ongoing project on the poverty and equality in Sabah and Sarawak. Initially, that this is the question that we want to address for the second phase of this study. Unfortunately, because of COVID-19, the project is put on hold this year. So maybe hopefully next year we can answer all these questions. In terms of the efficiency, so what we get from this is the first finding we get from the residents is that they still feel that it's not enough, and then we also talk with some of the one who actually approved the program. No, the one from the Department of Welfare actually in the local level actually said that they're still in terms of the limited in terms of financial resources as well. But in terms of the cross validations and also the actual data on the household level, this is the things that we want to do in the second phase of the study. So hopefully next year when we already complete the survey will be distributed in rural area in Sabah and Sarawak to know the household quantitative data at the household level. So we hope we can get more insight about the first finding that I presented today.
Okay. Thank you, Peter. So yeah, that's another thing from Sharimin. So another thing, why did your team selected Song district for the study of poverty? So is Song recorded the highest number of poverty incidents in Sarawak?
Okay, thanks again, Sharimin. Thank again, Sharimin. So the first part of the study, actually, we focus on Covet district. We actually cover Balaga, Covet, and Song. So just for today's presentation, I will just present Song. But as I mentioned in my last slide, there's some food of thought that we need to further probing or searching or explore, because the household income survey mentioned that 0% poverty in recorded in Song 2016. So our selection earlier was based on, because Covet is among the largest, one of the largest division in Sarawak. So that is where we started actually to do our research. Just to tell you the historical background of research. Yeah. And first, in terms of the size of Covet itself. Second, we know that this area is very remote it's quite far from Kuching as well. So we did our data collection in Balaga, in Covet itself, and also in Song. So, but for just for today, I'm just present the finding from Song district only.
Okay. Yeah. So that means your team owes us 2 more sites. Okay, let us move to the next question from Anonymous here. We have only been told about the study sample, 21 interviews in longhouses, but nothing on the conduct and content on in-depth interview. So a respondent was seen in group from the pictures. So were these FGDs or one-to-one interviews? What criteria was used to select respondents from a longhouse? What is the demographic profile of the 21 individuals interviewed?
All right, thank you again. So FGD, we did it is separately. The picture I show you is where we did our kind of like of opening remarks to them. So where we actually invite them, or we tell them about this is our project, what is our project is all about. After that session, we did a face-to-face interview with them, one-to-one sessions, and then followed by the focus group discussions with them. As follow group discussion is different day. We call them in to bring them to the Song town, where actually we invite all the head of households, later head of household as well, head of household, sorry. So in terms of the demographic profile of the 21 individual, most of them that we interview is above 40 years old, and actually they are working in terms of their job, they're working with the traditional agriculture sector, such as paddy plantations. This is the biggest one, paddy plantations. and also some of this, the black pepper plantation, but it's a very small scale, and some also the sweetlet farming, also small scale. This is where we actually try to construct what the potential, what the barrier, and what are the opportunities that can be introduced to improve the community, especially in terms of income generation and so on. Yeah.
Okay. So I hope it's answer the question. So this is from Ray. Japan is facing an aging population issue in rural areas. So does the same problem is happening in rural Malaysia, such as Sarawak? Aging.
This is the typical situation. I think in terms of the characteristics, I've never been to Japan, so I'm not sure what the physical characteristics of rural area in Japan. But in Song, in Song in particular, but maybe not applicable to Sarawak, most of, as I mentioned, young generation actually migrate out to the city center and left older generation behind in the long houses. I think maybe it's quite different compared to Japan. I think because Japan is super aging country. As a whole, Japan is super aging country. We are not the aging country yet. So I think that's my observations for now.
Okay. Next, the question is, according to World Bank, the project poverty rate in Malaysia does not really reflect the situation on the ground. So in fact, they are saying that poverty rate lingers around 20%. What is your estimate poverty in Sarawak, and how does it fare compared to other states?
All right. This is something that I would say a need for the probing against, because I think the economics, because I mentioned just now I'm not an economics, as an urban studies scholar, I think the economics will know there must some factor that can be conclude before the poverty rate can be counted. So based on the HIS data that I reported today during the presentations, the percentage of poverty rate in Sarawak in general is 0.6%. I'm not sure whether it could be up to 20%. This really need a substantial data before we can conclude that 20% poverty rate in Sarawak. But perhaps further research on this need to be done. I think so, because we do not have. I do not have any data on this to say that it's more than 20%.
Yeah. So that's why, as I mentioned earlier, the impactful research will consist of multidisciplinary people into your research. Yeah? So, well, good luck for the next data collection. Next question is from the Faculty of Languages and Linguistics, Dr. Talaibek. Yeah? So thank you for your informative presentation. I thought that the river itself is a big opportunity to establish good economic development, because the capacity of product transportation, which is resources from agriculture and forest related plantation, is far cheaper than by road. So of course, I'm not sure about the condition of the river, but anyway, are there any initiatives taken by the government to develop and boost the potentials of the river?
Yeah, I think just to be fair with the local community in Sarawak, everyone is asking for road connectivity. River is not that easy because sometimes during kemarau seasons,
dry season.
During the dry seasons, it's quite difficult to reach the rural area because the water level is very low. And in terms of the cost, I think transportation by river is more expensive than road, because by river you need to buy your own fuel. That costs you around 200-300 ringgit for one way trip, one round trip. If compared to if you use the public transportation, it will cost you 20 to 30 ringgit. At the moment, I'm not aware whether there is any initiative taken by the government to develop a potential anything in the Sungai Ketibas River, especially in Ketibas River. I'm not sure, but I'm not aware whether there is any initiative taken by the government at the moment. Yeah.
Okay, so that means further research will enlighten this question. Yeah? Okay, so next from anonymous here, in your opinion, is the development happening currently in Sarawak still very urban centric? Should the state go all out to fast track rural development to spur more economic activities there? This also incentive them to stay put and prevent migration to West Malaysia as well as overseas.
Well, I think the people really love to see that if, more development. For instance, we could actually create develop a rural area that can self-sustain, meaning that there are economic activities in there, there are job opportunities in there. I do believe that young people will love to stay at least nearby with their area, number one. And then, I think now the government actually started very actively try to improve the community, the community and the socio-economic well-being of the rural community by providing some funding and incentives for the local community. So this is a good move from the state government, I think. So now at least now we can see some progress in terms of rural development in Sarawak. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I hope by having more projects with interconnected, we'll welcome the young generation, and then they are a kind of factor, one of the factors to stop them from migrate to West Malaysia or to the overseas. Yes, this is from Nordiana, from UKM. Hi, Dr. Peter. Regarding to the poverty program implemented in Sarawak, what is the successful one and significantly reduce the poverty incident in Song specifically?
So as I mentioned just now, we really love to see if there is a specific pilot project implemented by the government to measure the success of the poverty reduction in Song particularly. But I can say that in terms of the social well-beings of the community, the government did quite a good job. Just now I showed to you the longhouses that transform from traditional longhouse to the modern longhouse, where the government gives an incentive to build this new longhouses. And also I think in terms of the to reduce the burdens of the poor community, also in terms of Ikase program is also very helpful for the residents in rural area in Song. In terms of education as well, bantuan makanan, food aid program, and financial assistance for poor children is also helping them. Even though it's not much, but it definitely is helping. Certainly, it helps the poor family a lot. So I think some program is successful, but it could be improved, in the future, so that everyone can enjoy the assistance or the incentive given by the government. Yeah. So that's my remark. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Peter. I think all the questions that posted answered. And if you have any more question, in the screen mentioned that just ask. You can email to the center and also me, also Dr. Peter here. So that's also the contact number. If you have any more question. So let us move on. Before we stop, maybe I have one last question, because I was asked to conclude, but let the speaker conclude it, which is better. But his conclusion probably led by my question. So you mentioned that the Trans-Borneo Highway, almost completed, is about 90 to 95%. And there was a question of maintaining the river, as a main transportation, or one of the main transportations of this, what we call it, areas. So I'm not saying contradicts, but maybe it's a kind of complement because some of the things could be transported easily, fastly through the river, and another thing, could be transported to the highway. So that means, is it good to maintain both in terms of for the future of this community that belong to this area, in uplift, their maybe income, and of course later will be their livelihood. So could you comment on this?
Yeah, I think both transportation mode, water and land transportation mode, could be interrelated to each other, and both modes could provide opportunity, but in a different way, to the rural residents in songs. So personally, as someone from that area, I think that road and river connectivity should be maintained. At least the residents who they have different choices in terms of their which one to choose in terms of their connectivity and accessibility. Those afford to use the land transportation, they can choose that, and those who cannot afford, maybe they can still maintain the river as their main transportation system. But for me personally, it is good to maintain both.
Okay.
But respondent really want to have land transportation in place, good connectivity, so on and so forth.
I see. So that meant the people over there, looking forward, to enjoy the land transportation. But of course, the river transportation is still very important because of some of the goods could be easily transported through the river system. So by having that statement, well, on behalf of the people over there, so thank you for your insight information as well. So I think our target, to in this seminar almost achieved, because all the questions are already responded, and the speaker has performed very well in his presentation, and of course with the help of the co-writer, co-author of the project, Dr. Rohana Jani, and also Dr. Azmah Haji Osman. And with that, with the title of Rural Residents' Perceptions on the Poverty, Alleviation and Governance in Sarawak, we hope that this project will achieve their target, and of course, not only as an output, but as outcome of the project. And maybe in the future, it can be or can lead to the impactful research. So we thank Dr. Peter and his team by congratulate to all of you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And thank you very much for your participation in this conference, and hope to see all of you again in the next series of the presentation, the seminar by Ungku Aziz Brown Bag Webinar Series number 1 for 2020-21, with the topic Use Constructive Fear of Poverty and Inequality, the Power of Identity and the Identity of Power among Youth in Malaysia Urban Public University, on the 7th January 2021, 10 a.m. Of course, by Microsoft Teams. So again, thank you for your patience to be with us, and I hope that on behalf of Ungku Aziz Center for Development Studies, all of you enjoy your day, be safe and take care. Assalamualaikum and bye-bye.